Some shows talk about one team. Other shows barely talk sports. This show will talk Packers, Brewers, and Bucks every day. Every day. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily with Steve Sparky Fifer. Served up by Wendy's on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan. Download the Wendy's app today.
It is time again. Hour number 3 here already, past 4 o'clock, under 1 hour away from the smooth, sultry tones of Tommy Wirtz. Comes up today from 5 until 6:30. Andrew Haney going up against Freddie Peralta, Brewers and Pirates, game 2. Brewers need to win this dang game. Like, you can't lose 2 out of 3 to the Pirates. You certainly better not get swept by the Pirates at American Family Field. They blew an absolute golden opportunity last night. The Cubs got hammered by the Cardinals. You had every opportunity to gain another game to get to what 2.5 it would have been with a win last night, and they could not simply finish at the end of the day. They had runners on base there in the 8th with an opportunity to do something and couldn't get that guy in, Charlie.
I mean, this is consistent. You can't, for lack of a better term, blow your load against one of these poor teams or one of the good teams in the league and all of a sudden crash out against these awful teams. These are teams you should be beating by a lot, especially after you put up all the runs that you have the past couple weeks. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. They need to be better. It just is plain and simple.
Well, yes, and the offense, again, and you're not going to win every game. I understand it. You're not going to go 162-0. But you want to take advantage when you have opportunities to gain ground. Now, I said last night when I was texting with my friends, the positive in all of this is the Cubs lost. So you didn't lose ground. So yes, you lost, but because they lost, you didn't lose any ground. So it could have been worse. They could have beat the Cardinals, and you could have lost the game on top of that and fallen back to 4.5. Now you're still 3.5 back, feeling good. Cardinals are feeling really good, so confidence will be going sky high going into game 2 here. The bad news is, I think, if you are wanting the Cubs to lose, their 2 worst pitchers are now done pitching the last 2 days. Ray and Brown both pitched the last 2 days. Brown pitching yesterday. He has not been good. Ray pitched the day before that. Brewers fans know what that's all about. And it was funny because remember David Hall the last time he was on, Colin Ray. Okay. You just buy into that, buddy. There's no way that's lasting for 6 months. But either way, so those 2 guys just pitch. So now their better part of their rotation is going to pitch. The good news is Imanaga is not going to pitch in this series for the Cubs. He'll come back the next series for Chicago. So the Cardinals don't have to deal with Imanaga. And the Cardinals are in the same boat as the Brewers, right? They're tied with the Brewers chasing the Cubs. So from a Brewers perspective, I still want the Cardinals to win. I don't care. We can both climb that mountain together to get to the top. I just want to get to the top. Then I'll worry about what the Cardinals are doing at this point. It's too early, in my mind at least, to be scoreboard watching necessarily, but you have to kind of scoreboard watch as a Brewers fan because you don't want to get this thing back to 6 or 7 games back. You want to keep this thing at around 3 games or so, because if you're around 3 games or so at the deadline, you're definitely buying and are still in the middle of this thing. If you're back 7, 8 games at the deadline of the division, and then let's say you're 4 or 5 back of the wild card, well, then you're selling or not doing anything at that point.
The Brewers are one of about 3 or 4 teams just in the National League that are teetering on that fence once they get to the trade deadline here. And you look at a team like Atlanta, they're in that same boat. St. Louis is kind of in that same boat right now. If I'm the Brewers, you have to pay attention to all these other teams and what's happening around the league, because if we're being honest, if it's between you and the Cardinals and the Cubs, you're much more likely that the Cardinals are going to fall out and crash and burn here. You want to be cheering for them to win now because the Cubs probably aren't going to get as slow as the Cardinals can get later on in the season.
And that's the other thing that we aren't privy to, and we don't know how this is all going to go, right? We don't know how injuries are going to affect the Cubs, right? Will they get injury plagued here in the last couple of months and just fall right past the Brewers and the Cardinals because they can't overcome a couple of big injuries? Will the Brewers get hit with a couple of devastating injuries and all of a sudden they're out of it and they're looking to next year already, end up having to trade at the deadline? Health is going to be a big factor here, right? You can't lose anybody significant. On top of still wanting to win and compete and stay in this race, you also can't afford to lose a big bat because you don't have many in this lineup. You can't afford to lose a big bat between now and the trade deadline either, because you could say you're still in it, But if you already need a bat and now you have to replace a middle-of-the-order bat, let's say, now that may be the difference in what you're going to do at the deadline, regardless of where you are at that point.
I think that might be a death sentence for a team like the Milwaukee Brewers, if we're being honest.
I don't think it's a death sentence because I don't think anybody is that big of a deal. Unless Yelich keeps this up, then fine.
Well, but the problem is they're not that big of a deal, but when the rest of the team isn't playing up to standards, especially in the lineup,
right,
when you lose a guy like Yelich, that all of a sudden becomes a big deal.
Sure, it absolutely can. Yes, if he is still doing this,
yes,
at that point at the deadline. But like we just talked about Cheerio, he's hitting 260 this month. So in the previous month, he hit less than that. So from that perspective, he hasn't been, going all crazy like he was in the second half last year. Contreras has slowed down mightily since he fractured that thumb. He hasn't been the same hitter necessarily. Hoskins got hot for a month, and then he went back down into the crapper again. So you don't really have those huge guys. Now, for the Cubs, on the other hand, they lose Kyle Tucker. Good luck to you. They lose Pete Carl Armstrong. Good luck to you. Because those two are huge bats for this lineup. Hell, Seiya Suzuki is just as big of maybe not as big as those two, but he's third in line in that offense right now. So that's another one they can't afford to lose. The Brewers, you can't point at anybody and go, oh boy, it's going to change everything now because nobody outside of Yelich right now, for the time being this month, but up until Yelich, there hasn't been anybody playing like that.
I mean, if you really think about what you just said, that's kind of sad for the Milwaukee Brewers, the fact that they don't have that player and that they're not going to change.
No, you're wrong. It's encouraging. It should put a smile on your face.
You say so.
It should make you happy. You want to know why?
Why's that?
Because y'all got all that talent and you're 3.5 games in front of a team that has got nobody doing anything on offense. And if this team gets going at all on offense, is going to be passing you in the night while you go the other way if you guys slow down at all offensively. From a Brewer fan perspective, I'm excited because I know offensively they can't be much worse than they've been through 3 months. But I also know that if Churio gets going and Contreras gets going, if a couple of these guys get going, they can get themselves on a run where they win 12 out of 15 or something like that because the pitching isn't going anywhere. They're so deep, they'll just send Patrick down. Oh, here's Brandon Woodruff. Enjoy. Right? And you just move on. So I don't worry about the pitching. If the offense clicks, 2 or 3 guys get hot for 2-3 weeks, this team can roll off a bunch of wins quickly, and all of a sudden they're in first place, and the Cubs are chasing them just like that. The Cubs, on the other hand, have got to have that offense because their pitching isn't as good. That is where, if their offense or a player goes away, it will affect them much greater than the Brewers.
I think so. I'm not saying that it won't affect them more than the Brewers. I'm just saying that where the Brewers are right now, it to me is a little discouraging because there's a lot of ifs that you're talking about. This is all on the idea that these guys are all going to get better, that you're going to have 3 or 4 guys get better. What we're seeing right now through this first half of the season, each week that I see a William Contreras not really take that next step, that Jackson
he's playing with a busted thumb, with all due respect to him.
I get it, yes. But you need him to be on the field. That's the problem. When Sal Frelick starts taking these steps back, when Bryce Terang and Joey Ortiz isn't playing well, and you're relying on those guys to be a part of potentially these ifs that can start playing better, I just hate relying on stacking on ifs. If I got guys that are for sure, that makes me feel a lot better about this.
Sure, but I know one thing. They for sure have not played well offensively through 2.5 going on 3 months, and they're 3.5 out of first. From a Brewer fan perspective, that makes me very excited because, again, like I said before, I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think they can play much worse than they're playing right now, which, again, makes me feel pretty good that they're in this boat. All right, let's switch gears. Let's go this way.
It's time for your green and gold update on Wisconsin Sports Daily, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan with Steve Sparky Fifer.
All right, let's get to it. Green and gold update here. I know there's not a ton going on one way or the other. With that being said, we always look for something to talk about Packer-wise. Every day on this station, we have the Pack-A-Day radio show with Andy Herman, right? Today he was off, Tommy Wirtz was on, and Tommy Wirtz was on. Charlie Usen was a guest on the show. Tomorrow, Andy Herman is back for the rest of the week, and you'll hear all of his guests coming up the rest of the week. But every day for an hour, there's Packer football talk here on The Fan. Every day on this show at usually 4 o'clock, providing there's not a guest that takes over and has to be moved like we did today for Charlie Sounds of the Day, we talk Green Bay Packers. So today I found a piece by Jacob Infante on the ProFootballNetwork.com website. I like ProFootballNetwork.com myself. I love their mock draft simulator that they have. I think there's some good writers over there that goes along with it. My guy Ian Cummings is over there, does NFL draft coverage for them. I think he's outstanding. A lot of good guys that we've had on this show over the course of time. Jacob Infante is not a guy that I've ever really sought out to have on. And you're like, well, why? He's a huge Bears dude, like way over the top Bears fan. Like take Charlie and put him on steroids by like 50. That's this dude on Twitter. So I really have never really thought of like, oh, I want to get Jacob Infante. Because if we want to talk Bears, I just get somebody on from the Score in Chicago and we talk Bears. Or I get one of the Bears beat writers and whatever else. Never really thought I wanted to get Jacob Infante on. But he wrote this piece today for Pro Football Network. So we're waiting to see if we can get Jacob Infante and we've not been able to get hold of him. But he wrote this piece, one Defensive Player of the Year candidate for all 32 NFL teams. So from that perspective, this isn't rocket science that we're talking about, really, right? So he's going through every team, and he's pretty much putting down guys that are the best players on every team, in my opinion. Roquan Smith for the Baltimore Ravens. As a Bears fan, how badly do you miss Roquan Smith?
Pretty bad.
That had to hurt.
I mean, TJ Edwards has been pretty good. Tremaine Edmonds has been a little bit of a flop.
Lot of money.
But
lot of money
TJ
for both
Edwards
those guys.
has been good,
Yep.
you know.
Badger. Buffalo Bills, Matt Milano. Again, this isn't rocket science. What he essentially did was go through each team and pretty much pick their best player. Who do you think he picked for the Bears, who he is a fan of like you?
Jalen Johnson.
Right.
Easy, yeah.
Easy. So for the Green Bay Packers, he simply went with who he perceives as the best player on the football team. Xavier McKinney is who he went with. McKinney, 8 interceptions, 11 pass deflections. McKinley had elite production in an All-Pro 24 season, finished 8th in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year, and if he's going to rise in the rankings this season, similar production will be necessary. Is he, in your mind, a legit Defensive Player of the Year candidate going into this thing? We've seen Charles Woodson go win Defensive Player of the Year, so there's some history in Green Bay for having this get done here at the end of the day. I think, and you tell me what you think, Nicolay Law Fans Hockey text line 414-677-1250, 414-677-1250. We only have a few minutes left here, so we may not have time to get to you, but throw out the number out there anyhow. Maybe we'll sneak you in. Because we have Andrew Wagner coming up talking about the Brewers, Forbes Sports Brewers writer, brought to you by Focus Baseball in about 5 minutes. I think a couple of things have to occur. I think the Packers defense has to be top 3 as a unit for him to be in the conversation. And I think he probably has to be in the top 3 in interceptions in the league to go along with that. And I'm going to throw in a caveat that only Jeff Halfley can control. Top 3 defensive unit, top 3 in interceptions for Xavier McKinney. And I think he probably has to have a handful of sacks via blitzing. Now, only Halfley can control the sacks. Because if he doesn't send McKinley on blitzes, right, to go get the quarterback, he's not going to get the sacks. But I think if he's top 3 in interceptions, top 3 in defense, and he gets, 4 or 5 sacks from that safety position by blitzing and being a creator or being a disruptor, I think McKinney will be a legitimate candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. But if the Packers defense is 10th, and he's like 5th or 6th in interceptions and doesn't have any sacks, even though that's a really good year, that's not going to be enough. Top 3 picks, top 3 overall defensive unit, and probably 4 or 5 sacks. I think that's enough, Charlie.
I think that's the biggest key for Xavier McKinney is that he needs the right defense around him. Right now, as I look at this roster, I don't really see that as of right now. But what I do see is that he named a couple middle linebackers earlier on in that list, and I think a middle linebacker can thrive a little bit better on his own in a defense that may be a little bit weaker. If Edgerrin Cooper can take a second step here, that's the guy I'm looking at. I think he can be that athletic and that much of a freak like Roquan Smith on the field that he elevates the play of everybody else around him as well and makes Xavier McKinney's job easier by default. And I think that's what you're looking for. Because of that, I'm looking for him to be that guy that steps up.
I think Edgerrin Cooper is probably the most talented defensive player they have. I agree. I just don't know. Defensive player of the year in year 2. I mean, it's a gigantic ask. John in Hartford, you're next on the Nicolay Law Fan Talking text line. What's up, John?
Hey, Sparky, how's it going?
Going good, man. What's up?
Good. So, I like Xavier McKinney, but after Jair went down last year, his production went down. Most of his interceptions last year were when Jair was around.
That's true.
I think if the Packers defense is going to take a step forward, it's got to be Cooper.
So you're with Charlie. You think it's Edger and Cooper that is in position to have that breakout year?
If the Packers defense is going to be better than last year, it's got to be him.
I don't necessarily disagree. What kind of numbers does he have to put up to be in that conversation, though?
I think the main number he's got to do is he's got to be around the ball and causing a bunch of turnovers, whether it's forced fumbles or sacks or pressures on the quarterback that lead to interceptions. That's where he's got to be.
I agree. I think he's got to be a game changer. Thanks for the call. He's got to be a guy that you see on the highlights every week making an impact play on defense, changing the course of a game, right? Like he brings up forcing a fumble, deflecting a ball that gets picked, sacking the quarterback, getting the running back in the backfield for a loss of 2 or 3. I think he's got to be probably around the league leaders in tackles for losses. I think he's got to be there. I don't think he's going to be anywhere near double-digit sacks, but let's say he has 6 or 7 sacks to go along with it, 3 interceptions, a few forced fumbles to go along with it. It's got to be everything. But I think it's the same thing as Xavier McKinney, Charlie. This defense still has to be in the top 3. I don't care what his numbers are. If that defense isn't a top 3 defense, I don't think you can win that.
Middle linebacker, I don't know if I fully agree. I think it's a lot easier to rack up some of these stats on probably a worse defense for a middle linebacker, actually. When you look at a guy like Foyesade Olakun, who has been the tackle leader in the NFL for the past 5 or so seasons for the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's been because he gets a ton of these combined tackles, these solo tackles that a lot of other guys are missing. If he were to add on 3 to 4 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles like you're talking about, maybe a few TFLs and sacks, he would have shot straight up the Defensive Player of the Year boards just because he's getting these extra stats because guys around him aren't performing as well.
But you got Quay in the middle.
You do. And I think Quay Walker is a guy that at the second half of last season, we saw him start to kind of come out until he got hurt. And then it just didn't really look that great before that. And with him, I just don't really trust that that's going to continue moving forward here. When you look at Xavier McKinney in the safety position, they rely a lot more on some of these other players making plays in front of them for them to get their interceptions, for them to make their tackles. If the cornerbacks aren't going to be doing their jobs, it's a lot harder for Xavier McKinney to do his job as well. I can't say the same thing for Edger and Cooper.
He is Charlie Hughes, the producer of the show. Steve Sparky Fifer with you. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily, served up by Wendy's, live from the 1250 AM 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Our guy, Andrew Widener of Forbes Sports, Brewers writer, presented by Focus Baseball, will join us coming up next. Your weather forecast, 82 degrees currently, partly cloudy skies, chances of rain from 8 o'clock throughout the remainder of the night, low of 64.
Green light. Drives it down the line. If it's fair, it's gone. It is a fair ball, and we're tied. He was going on 3-0.
Great hit there by Christian Yelich, hitting .364 in the month of June right now. And really coming into his own finally after struggling for 2 months. Highlight courtesy of FanDuel Sports Network, levering on the call there. Coming up, we're going to get into things that we missed. There was another NBA trade that happened earlier today. Sometimes there's just dumb organizations. And yet again, Charlie and I knew that this organization wasn't very smart. And they just continue to prove us right, Charlie, over and over again.
I would say both these organizations that are involved in this trade aren't the smartest organizations.
Fine. Yes, no, that's completely fine. The one thing you cannot say is that this Brewers organization is not smart, because clearly they are. And how about our guest here? You want to talk about smart? Woo-wee! Valedictorian, I heard.
What's the latest on the crew? Let's go inside the clubhouse with Drew Wagner of Forbes Sports on Wisconsin Sports Daily. Served up by Wendy's on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan. Inside the Clubhouse is brought to you by Focus Baseball. Sign your kids up now for July open tryouts at focusbaseball.com. Ages 6 to 17.
There he is, Mr. Smarty Pants. He is Andrew Wagner of Forbes Sports. How are you doing, Mr. Wagner?
It's hot, man. It's hot.
It's hot.
That's all I got.
Isn't that what the women say about you whenever you walk into a bar?
No, they hate me. That's pretty universal.
No.
Yeah,
No, I've heard about you spitting the game at women and women falling all over themselves for you. That is not true. You're making stuff up.
You know what's amazing, and I found this out now that I'm old and single, is like, if you're a 47-year-old man, you get told that there must be something wrong with you because you're old and single by people with multiple divorces. Like,
yeah, that's true. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, there's something wrong with me for being old and single, coming from someone with not one, not two, the mirror, yo.
Yes. Oh my goodness, you're right on the money. That was spot on. All right, Mr. Wagner, let's talk about Christian Yelich hitting .364 in the month of June. Back in April, we had the toe tap. Then we had the leg kick. Then we went back to the toe tap and screwed around trying to figure out what works. So what has finally clicked for Christian Yelich?
If I knew that, I'd be a hitting coach, man. I mean, it just seems to be clicking. Maybe it's a combination of everything. Maybe he's just seeing the ball better. Maybe everything is just syncing up. Maybe he's figured out, his newly healed back. And maybe it's something as simple as the weather and luck. Sometimes we forget that baseball is an absolutely ridiculous game, and it defies logic. No matter how many different numbers and metrics and evaluation tools are out there, it is a game of dumb luck more often than not. And sometimes it's a matter of a couple of inches of luck, hitting a ball right at someone, things like that. Sometimes the luck goes in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't. It sounds really stupid, but if you step back and look at baseball from a macro perspective, that's what it is. It's dumb.
It's interesting because I heard Pat Murphy talking, Brewers manager, after the game last night, and Murphy was talking about Bryce Terang, and the idea that he's hitting everything on the ground lately. And somebody brought up to him about, the key is, hitting it off your front foot and pulling the ball and getting the ball in the air and so forth. And Murphy, it was so good. Pat Murphy goes in this whole thing about, man, you can't just tell someone hit off with the front foot because then you're going to screw them all up if they go up there thinking about that type of deal. And then another reporter brought up, but in batting practice, Murphy's crushing the ball. And then he went on this whole thing about what happens between batting practice and a game. It was so good and so intuitive. You don't get that from a lot of managers, but it really tells you just how hard it is to play the game of baseball and hit a baseball when you hear Murphy explain all of this about Terang's struggles.
Yeah, it's definitely not the kind of explanation that we got from the delicate genius during his 9-year reign over the fiefdom,
The traitor, yes.
Who would have thought that a manager could actually answer a question without being a condescending jerk to the person asking it? It is a novel concept for me.
It is.
It was great, and it made a lot of sense. people think that if you rake in BP, you're going to rake in a game. Well, listen, first of all, they're not throwing as hard as the guys are throwing in BP. They're not throwing as far from where the guys are throwing in BP. There's a lot of differences between BP and a game. You know, you're not going up to BP trying to replicate a game condition. You're going up there to try to get loose. I mean, there's not a lot of stretches and exercises you can do to loosen up for swinging a baseball bat, right? The only way you can do it is by swinging a baseball bat.
Yep.
That's what batting practice is. It's to get your body ready to go for the game situation. If guys are throwing off the mound and chucking 100-mile-an-hour cheese, you know, Tran's going to do the exact same thing that he's doing in a game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. In fact, I'm taking that back. Was that before the game or after the game, that terrain conversation? I can't remember. Maybe it was before the game. But it was really, really well done by Pat Murphy either way, talking about all of that. Talking with Andrew Wagner, Forbes Sports Brewers writer, brought to you by Focus Baseball. He joins us usually every Tuesday and Friday at 3:20. Things got all messed up today because Pat Murphy was talking when he was supposed to be on the radio. So he joins us now here at 4:20. Let's talk a little bit about what Chad Patrick has done. We led off the show talking about Chad Patrick and his struggles his last 3 games. Pitched well the first outing in June. The last 3 outings, not so much. An ERA of 6 here in the month of June. I think you could argue that if there was any question before, there's no argument anymore. He has solidified his demotion once Brandon Woodruff is back, probably.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, it's not that unexpected. I mean, it's a pretty hefty workload. Guy's been going out there every 5 games. You know, even the minor leagues, yeah, you're pitching every 5 days, but they have a easier way of like limiting that, managing that kind of thing, shorter outings. You're not exerting as much effort because the at-bats aren't as difficult. Like, yeah, it doesn't surprise anyone at all, and it's not a knock on him. He's a young pitcher who's still learning. You know, he's going through and facing teams for a second time now. They've seen him up close and personal. They figure it out. He's got adjustments he has to make, and maybe he's probably getting a little bit tired too, and that's not out of the ordinary.
Let's talk about Jacob Mizorowski. He's got a big start tomorrow against Paul Skeens. That game is almost a sellout. Looking forward to seeing what that looks like tomorrow. Having said that, however, let's have the conversation about innings limits. Because if you look at what Mizorowski did 2 years ago, he was at 71 innings. If you look at what Mizorowski did last year, he was at 97 innings. Right now, he's in the mid-70s as we sit right now. Has there been any talk about innings limits for Jacob Mizorowski this year? Because there's a lot of Brewer fans that think, oh, yeah, he'll be in the playoff rotation. And I think you can get to about 120 to 130 by pitching him maybe once a week. But if they're going to pitch him every 5 days like everybody else, I mean, they're going to have to shut this dude down before they even get to September because he's going to reach the 20 to 30% increase that he had from 97 last year to about 120, 125 this year.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm curious to see what the press box is going to be like tomorrow because supposedly it's going to be jam-packed with a bunch of national looky-loos, which if I know anything about the Brewers media staff, they will kick us local guys out except for like the 2 or 3 everyday BBWA members. Like we'll probably be sitting in the bleachers looking forward to that. As for Mizorowski, one thing to keep in mind is they did kind of do a little load management with him in the minor leagues. Like if you look at his last couple outings before he came up, they were more abbreviated outings. They were kind of pulling him a little bit earlier. I honestly think that's also one of the reasons that they didn't bring him up until they did was because you can, again, like I was just talking about with Patrick before, you can manage workloads a little bit easier in the minor leagues. You know, you can manage those innings, you can manage those outings and efforts a little bit more in the minor leagues where the development is more important than the game outcome, if that makes sense. So we haven't really discussed any kind of innings limit with him yet, but if you look at his game logs at Nashville, you'll notice that they were kind of doing that leading into his call. And I would assume that was part of the reason that, one, they were doing that so they wouldn't have to put him on a harder limit once he got up here.
Well, that's great. But even with that being said, he's still only 20 innings or so, maybe less than 20 innings away from where he finished all of last year right now. And normally the increase is like 20 to 30% year over year when you're talking about a young pitcher. I mean, that puts him at 120. I mean, that gives you, 9 or 10 more starts If that's actually less than that. It's probably like 7 or 8 starts if he's going 5 innings. That's all he's got left if you're going on that 20 to 30% increase.
Yeah, and be that as it may. And maybe what you'll see is later on in the year, maybe when Woody comes back, if Patrick isn't scuffling, if Patrick kind of turns it around between now and then, maybe they send Miz back down and people will lose their minds over it.
Yes.
But it would be one of those things where, okay, we're going to send him down and focus him on, 4-inning outings, kind of lay off him a little bit, back off him a little bit so we can use him more later. Maybe that's an option. There's a lot of different ways they can do it. Some of them won't be popular, but I would assume they are going to be extra cautious with this guy because he is the future. Now, we've also seen guys that have shown a propensity to handle a significant increase. Look at the guy who's starting against him now. Paul Skeens had a pretty big jump in innings, and he turned out okay. So it's an individual thing. I think they're going to monitor it. I think they're going to be very cautious about it. I think they're going to, take every precaution necessary. But in terms of a hard limit, that hasn't come up yet.
He is Andrew Wagner, Forbes Sports Brewers writer, brought to you by Focus Baseball. Follow him on Twitter at @ByAndrewWagner. Freddie Peralta on the mound tonight for the Milwaukee Brewers. I would have to assume Freddie Peralta has been pretty instrumental for all these young guys that have come up throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, they look at him and they see a veteran who's gone out there and got the job done for a couple of years now. And they also see a guy who came up through the system. Now, granted, the Brewers didn't draft him. He was part of the Adam Lynn trade in a virtual unknown 18-year-old in that trade, but he came up through the system. He had a lot of expectations on him, a lot of hype on him, and he handled it very well. I think there's a lot of different ways that guys look up to him, and it goes well beyond just his performance on the mound. The real big thing that doesn't get noticed about, and I asked Pat Murphy about this after Miz's debut, for all that was important about what he did on the field, is it fair to say that what he does these next 4 days to prepare for that next start is just as, if not more important? And Murph absolutely agreed with it. How you prepare determines your success. So I think these young guys coming up and seeing the way that guys like Peralta go through their work in between starts is the best lesson they can get in their development.
Mr. Wagner, thank you so much for coming on. Look forward to hearing you coming up on the leadoff show with our guy, Tommy Wirtz, brought to you by the Potawatomi Sportsbook tonight between 5 and 6:30. Thank you, sir.
See ya.
There he is, Andrew Wagner, joining us here on The Fan. We are so far out in front of this Mizorowski story, Charlie. We are so far out in front. And I'm sorry, but this needs to be talked about, folks. He doesn't have many starts left. I know he's only had 2 at the big league level, but again, he's just over 70 innings, 30% from 97. It's going to put him at like 120, somewhere in that area maybe. So you're talking, 60 more innings is what we're talking about here? And if you limit them to 6 innings, that's 10 starts, somewhere in that area? Well, my God, if you go 2-1-2, or whatever that ends up being on a given start, 10 starts would be 1 a week the rest of the way through. 1 a week. No 2-start weeks for Mizorowski. You treat him like a college pitcher, and he pitches every 7 days. That being said, he's at his limit at the end of the year, and you're out by the time the playoffs roll around. So again, we're back to, are you going to do it? I'll give you my best guess at this. Number 1, I wouldn't bet for him Rookie of the Year. I think that's a loser bet, so I wouldn't do that. Number 2, the reason I say it's a loser bet is because I'm willing to bet you that come the end of July, I would not be surprised if they traded for some veteran rental, front of the rotation type guy for the last 2 months, and Mizorowski goes back into the bullpen at the major league level and finishes the year as that guy sitting there in front of Trevor McGill or pitching 2 innings here, 2 innings there, like they use Josh Hader from time to time, and finish the year out that way with Mizorowski so they could still use him in the postseason out of the bullpen, and they end up surprising everybody. Or Nasty Nestor comes back, and when Nestor comes back, Cortez comes back, then Mizorowski goes to the bullpen, and Cortez takes his spot in the rotation.
I don't think him going to the bullpen completely kills his Rookie of the Year candidacy. I think that actually helps. Like, he's still pitching then at that point.
Doesn't matter.
He's still on the mound. We saw Brian Hudson go into the All-Star break last season as a top 3 Rookie of the Year candidate as a full-time reliever. And then he sucked after that, which didn't help. But at the same time, he was still at that point. I think keeping Jacob Mizorowski on the field doesn't completely ruin his candidacy. I think it probably goes down a little bit if he goes into the bullpen, but I don't think that's automatically a loser bet at that point. I can't really think of too many other people in the National League right now that are on that list higher than him. Drake Baldwin has been the National League Rookie of the Year certified winner for a while now, the catcher for Atlanta.
There's nothing special about him.
And he's not that special. If Jacob Mizorowski can just stay in the bullpen, stay on the field, and keep pitching, I think there's a realistic shot he can still win it.
Listen, he's the most talented rookie of what's there right now. Yes, I totally agree he's the most talented rookie. I just find it hard to believe that they're going to vote somebody in that's pitching, 3 innings a week.
What if he were to take the closer role from McGill? Would that change things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely it would. I can't see them doing that.
That would be crazy.
I can't see them doing that. But yes, if he's the closer, that's totally different than being just a guy in the bullpen that's pitching the 7th or the 8th inning. I think that's completely different. Hey, if you love Wendy's classic chocolate and vanilla Frosty flavors, there's some big news. They're all new Frosty Swirls and now Frosty Fusions. Same creamy treat you've always loved, now with a flavor refresh. So what are these new flavors? Okay, well, you got the Frosty Swirl. Strawberry, brownie batter, caramel. Always ask for extra swirl. Always. Okay. Now the Frosty Fusions. Oreo brownie, that's my favorite with chocolate frosty base because you can get any of these fusions with the chocolate or the vanilla frosty base. Oreo brownie, caramel crunch, that's pieces of toffee, and Pop-Tart strawberry. So clock in for sweet treat time with Wendy's all-new frosty flavors. A refresh on a classic, it's gotta be Wendy's. Coming up next, things that we missed. One of the things that we missed is something that I've been sitting on the whole show. Because by the time we come on the air tomorrow, the Brewers game will already be going with Skeens and Mizorowski. And Mitch Nellis is heading out to the game tomorrow to cover the game for the Fan. And he'll be able to sit in all of the crowded stadium that it's going to be. I'm assuming it'll end up being a sellout. So with that being said, that we're not going to be able to kind of preview the game tomorrow before it happens, I got an email sent to me earlier today that is treating this Mizorowski versus Skeens matchup like it's the Super Bowl. I mean, I have got props and bets on everything based on these two facing each other. So I kind of want to dive into that and kind of see where we're both at on that. And by the time we get through this, I'm sure Tommy Wirtz will be in here to participate as well. And there was another NBA trade earlier today. And as Charlie put it, between two horrible run organizations, which I think is fair. So we'll see if anybody actually is a winner. And I don't think either one are because you're going from one loser situation to another loser situation, one of which is a Wisconsin native. So we'll tell you what that's all about coming up next on things that we missed on today's show. Wisconsin Sports Daily, served up by Wendy's, live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, the Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Sparky here. Wisconsin Sports Daily, serving up by Wendy's. Live on the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, the Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. See Sparky, Fifer here. Charlie, use it, other side of the glass. 5 o'clock. It's that time. Leadoff show, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Tommy Wirtz will take you up to 6:30. Brewers, Pirates, tonight game 2. Freddie Peralta on the mound for the Brew Crew. We'll hear from our guy, Pat Murphy, Brewers manager from before today's game. Drew Wagner will join us. Austin Herdania of the Potawatomi Sportsbook will come on as well. And yet again, he is just rolling along, just doing his thing. I have suggested to you many times, and I will suggest to you again. When you know we are doing a 90-minute show, or even a 60-minute show, you know what time the show starts, right? Drive yourself to the 4th floor of the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Stream the show on the Odyssey app because you may not get reception in the parking garage. Stream it right there on your phone on the Odyssey app, AUDACY. It's free. Stream it. Then when Austin Herdania comes on and tells you this is the parlay that I like for tonight, when he tells you, you get out of your car, you go into the Potawatomi Hotel Casino, through the sliding doors, you go in. There are the kiosks right there to the right side. And you make the wager right away. Now, you got nowhere to be. And then you head over maybe to Rock and Brew. Maybe go down to the Potawatomi Sportsbook kitchen. You have something to eat down there. Get your seat. Watch your winnings roll in. And feel good about yourself. And then you split it with Tommy Wirtz. Because if it wasn't for him having Austin Herdania on, you would never have known what Austin Herdania's bets were. And would have no idea. Tommy Wirtz deserves a cut, I think.
I don't know about that.
I think he deserves a cut, some percentage. Even if Tommy Wirtz got 5% of everybody that made a bet based on what Austin Herdania said, I think Tommy Wirtz would be significantly wealthier than he is now.
I will say that the largest bet to hit this year was a parlay I built by myself without Austin Herdania. So I am giving out the best advice I can, but I don't know if Potawatomi is going to want Austin Herdania on the show next year because it's kind of crazy how good he is at drawing it up. I mean,
baseball is so hard too.
Yeah, every week.
So hard.
Every week he's got to be 3-4 weeks in a row where he's giving out a winning bet.
Yes.
I mean, it's seriously, if you're betting every day with us, he's putting up plus 300 parlays, plus 400 parlays every day with us, and the hit rate the last month has been crazy. Absolutely insane. So I don't know, but like I said, he can't bet at the Potawatomi Sportsbook, obviously, for part of his job, and he's telling you honestly what he feels like the best bets are, and really giving awesome advice. Comes with trends every day, too, riding with Christian Yelich streaks or whoever might be having the best stretch during that time. He has history dating back on all of it, too. I seriously don't know how Potawatomi is letting him continuing to come on because he's giving out way too good of advice for free.
All right. I want to, before we get into this Brewers-Pirates preview for tomorrow, because I got an email filled with like all these prop bets for Skeens versus Mizorowski tomorrow. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. Before we do that, Charlie, your thoughts on this NBA trade with two horrible organizations. The Pelicans are trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a future second-round pick to Washington for Jordan Poole, Wisconsin native, Sadiq Bey, and a number 40 pick in Wednesday's NBA draft, sources tell ESPN. Washington now expected to approach $100 million in projected cap space in 2026. The Pelicans get younger with the additions of Poole and Bey. Your thoughts on the winner of this deal? Clearly, the Wizards are trying to free up money to spend on nobody because nobody wants to play there. They can have $100 million. I still don't think they attract flies. But having said all of that, your thoughts on this one?
I guess the Wizards. I mean, this is such a nothing trade in my. When you look at the details of this, first of all, Kelly Olynyk was the first name that caught my mind because I didn't even know he was still in the NBA. If I'm being honest,
what are you talking about? I was talking about Kelly Olynyk earlier at the trade deadline. I think about going in Kelly Olynyk.
And at that point, I had to look up his stats because I was not sure how good he was at that point in the season because I was barely aware that he was still in the league. So at this point, I mean, that feels like nothing. And then C.J. McCollum, he's a good player, but he isn't healthy ever. That was part of the problem with him being on the New Orleans Pelicans is that he's playing with Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, who were both never healthy, and then they trade away Brandon Ingram. So now you only have these two guys to rely on, and they're not on the court. So get him out of there, sure. The Wizards taking that on Chris Middleton's giant contract, yeah, they're probably going to be semi-awful this year, but also you have two pretty good veterans that are going to be leading that team with some maybe exciting young players. There's something there. This Pelicans team, it kind of seems like Zion Williamson isn't really fully bought in on being on this team. Why would you continue to add pieces like Jordan Poole or Sadiq Bey that could be significant role players on a better team? Why are you bringing that in just to be in the same exact spot you were in before? It just doesn't make any sense.
I'm not convinced Zion Williamson's all in on being an NBA player, if we're being honest. I'm not convinced that he is. I'm not convinced he ever has been. I had an issue with him coming out of school. I wasn't convinced on this dude. I'm still not convinced on this dude. Jordan Poole is a me guy, period. So now you're going to give him to Zion Williamson, another me guy, and say, go figure it out. Now, we talked earlier about Drew Holiday getting traded to Portland, and you thought it was more of a mentor role than anything else. Him going back to New Orleans with this crew that they got now, that would have made sense to try and help fix Zion, to try and help fix Poole. Poole's very talented basketball player, but he's a me guy. And from a fan perspective, I don't want him in my locker room. I got no interest, none whatsoever. And Zion, same type of deal, got no interest in that either. So you need somebody, whoever that's going to be, of a veteran presence to try and help and guide this team. But for the immediate future, both these teams stink. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. But McCollum is at least a professional. Like, you're putting a pro in there into that locker room with Middleton, with Marcus Smart if he's back, and you got some pros in that locker room at least.
I mean, the other thing I'm thinking right now is that a guy like Jordan Poole potentially in the long term could have more trade value at the trade deadline this year, at the end of the season next year, than probably CJ McCollum will have. So if you are going to go on this last ride of sorts with Zion Williamson, if it doesn't work out and you want to blow up this entire organization, I think you can get a little bit more in the future from a team like the Warriors, maybe that want to bring back a Jordan Poole and get some more value out of that than a CJ McCollum in that situation. That's the only thing I can think of, but that's a really bad plan because you're really just 50-50.
Right.
And if it doesn't work out and then nobody wants him, then you're screwed.
Yeah, absolutely correct about that. All right, let's get to the statement that got emailed to me by my guy Jimmy Shapiro, who I've known for years. You should see this. Look at this. There's a whole big write-up of Jimmy Shapiro's thoughts, and he's comparing this matchup to seeing Dwight Gooden in 1985, who had the highest WAR, 12.2 for a pitcher since 1913 at that point. It's a whole big thing. And now he's got props. He's got Skeens Mizorowski props. He's got Cy Young odds. He's got Rookie of the Year odds. All of that stuff, right? And it's all right here. Now, again, when we start talking about all of these different odds, I can't wait to see what you all have to say about this. Rookie of the Year, Jacob Mizorowski, 3-2. Drake Baldwin, 5-2. Augustin Ramirez, 6-1. Chase Burns, starting tonight for the Reds, 14-1. I said earlier it's a foolish bet on Mizorowski because there's no way, based on his innings limit, that he's going to be able to finish this. Your thoughts?
Why you gotta be such a hater, man? I
Just
mean,
trying to be realistic so people don't lose money.
No, I
That's
really.
what I do. Just try to help.
I mean, do you know that the Brewers? Do you think they care? I don't want to say it in a mean way, but don't you think they understand the outrage that would happen if Jacob Mizorowski doesn't just get the keys to the Lambo at this point already? Like, why would you? It's not like they're going to send him down or go back to the bullpen, right?
You are that big, throwing that hard and that tall with all those limbs. At some point, you're expecting him to get hurt. Why in the world would you risk all of that even if he's 100% come October, you don't have the horses?
Do you know why? Do you know why, Sparky? Because every year that the Brewers are competitive, I am told that we wait for the future. I am told that you don't want to have Corbin Burns go out there and pitch every single day because he's not ready. I am told that Brandon Woodruff is not ready and that he needs to wait and go out there for next year. I want the Brewers to be competitive every day, not when the playoffs come.
They have been.
Not when...
You've had an entertainment full of fun for years since this owner took over.
Yeah. So much fun we're talking about right now. Absolutely. No, screw that. Get Mizorowski in the rotation. Tell him he's getting the keys to the car. Look at what they're doing with Paul Skeens, and they're drawing up the craziest trade proposals ever if you don't want him on the team. Or you could do a Jackson Chourio contract right now, pay him even more money. Give him 10 years, $130 million right now. Jacob Misiorowski, who says no? I am tired of waiting, innings limit, whatever, that comes with the phenom you get at a position. The Pirates are ignoring it, and it's working just fine. And I get Skeens has a different build, but he does the exact same stuff that Misiorowski does.
Not exactly. Misiorowski's throwing harder than him.
Well,
not exactly.
I think Skeens,
not exactly the same thing.
Skeens can throw pretty hard, man.
I don't think he's throwing as many 100-mile-an-hour pitches in a game as Misiorowski did the last game this year at any point.
Skeens, I believe, in the LSU championship game, threw 102 in the 9th inning.
Which is great. But again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about this innings limit. They should treat Misiorowski like a college pitcher the rest of the way out. Pitch him every 7 days. That's that. You can't be pitching him twice a week and everything else. If there's a pitching limit, and again, we talked to Wayne earlier, nobody's brought it up yet, except us. But if the limit's going to be 125 or 130, he's in the 70s right now. You're talking like 50 to 60 innings is what you have left right now. That's it. So that's like 10 games. If you pitch him once a week, that gets you through September at once a week.
Why do they have to figure out what they have? They know what they have. It took 2 games. You know what you have.
Correct.
I want
and
the
you
discussion,
want to protect it.
No. I want the discussion to be, why is Freddie Peralta starting game 1 of the playoffs when we get to the playoffs? Because everyone wants to see Misiorowski.
It will be, let me see if I got this right. It will be Freddie Peralta, Nestor Cortez, and Quintana.
Are you just trying to make me vomit on air? Is that what you want me to do? That's what you want me to do. I'm sick that you just said that. I don't even know who you are right now, Mr. Fifer. You have earned Mr. Fifer until further notice, because Sparky does not. This is not Sparky on the radio.
You're getting the traitor treatment.
This needs to be. You need to help lead this narrative that Jacob Misiorowski can be used this year. However, you would use a starting pitcher, because he is MLB ready.
Go ahead.
Oh my gosh.
Let him pitch the 7th or 8th inning in September.
No, then you tell me how much fun you have at the end of the year.
It's not about me having fun.
It's
about making
fun.
sure I get to watch Misiorowski pitch for the next 10 years without missing 4 years because of Tommy John surgery.
So what if they don't sign him and then we didn't use him when they had us all this time in the beginning right there?
No, not if. They're not going to sign him.
Oh, my gosh.
They're not going to invest that much money in a pitcher. Listen to me. They're not going to invest that much money in a pitcher when you've got Logan Henderson and you've got...
Not better than Miz.
No, not saying he is.
Okay.
But if you're Mark Antanasio, man, I got all these other pitchers. I don't need to sign this guy. Jackson Chourio's special. I can see that. I don't got a lot of guys that look like him. Okay, fine. Maybe Made or Pena, I give them deals like Chourio. He's not going to pay a pitcher like that.
There is
no way.
Right
10-year deal for a pitcher in Milwaukee? Never happening.
That's why you catch it early. That's what they did with Jackson Chourio. They have to do it right now with Jacob Misiorowski as well. And he probably already knows he's going to make a boatload of money in his career. You cannot tell me that if they're trying to put the best rotation out for the Milwaukee Brewers, Jacob Misiorowski is not starting at least game 2 of any series.
No way. I don't think he starts in the playoffs. In fact, I don't think he's even in the rotation in September. It's Wisconsin Sports Daily, served up by Wendy's, live from the Van Studios. Powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Somebody get Tommy some heart medicine. Back with Tommy right after this, the Potawatomi Sportsbook. No, it's not their show. Well, it is their show, but it's not their show. It's a leadoff show powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. I'm all flustered now, too. Good night. Toodles.